Here with us, Ray. Ray Taken Alive, Hunk Papa Lakota, is a Lakota language teacher, learner, and activist for the Standing Rock Nation in South Dakota. Ray has advocated and successfully campaigned for tribal access, governance, and intellectual property protections over Lakota language materials that have been held by unauthorized third parties. Ray has contributed to podcasts, national news articles, and the larger public discussion on Indigenous data sovereignty and language revitalization. Thanks, Ray, and I'll hand it over to you.
Okay, thanks for having me. I'm gonna try to turn on my screen share real quick. Okay. Hopefully everyone can kind of see that.
Yeah, they should be able to.
Okay.
Do you want to just make it full screen? Yeah. Great.
Yep. Okay. All right. How many takipi? Chante etaha. Na peo chus papelo chewi chasha hemacha malakota. Leon petiki ha data sovereignty o iwo aglocking te. We choye ungit khapiki wakhan khanka. Echiata ucha nila wakhan midakuye. Naha da unkawan kakte hecha. My name's Ray Taken Alive. I'm Lakota. I'm going to talk about data sovereignty today. Our language comes from the Creator. Because of that, it's something that we cherish. And so I'm going to try to get through this really fast. I got my timer on, but I'm going to rush. And I'm going to share part of my story. I'm going to share what happened. And so we'll just get right into it. First of all, other than the facilitators of this panel, you do not have my consent to take pictures of me and or record videos of me speaking and share those videos with anyone. You do not have consent to take anything you hear today and use it in order to profit off of. You may not organize any of the Lakota cultural expressions, traditional knowledge, spiritual, intellectual property, or cultural teachings under any kind of copyright, license, patent, trademark, or any other consumer protection and or authority, business protection and or authority. These now and forever belong to the Oceti-Sakowin people. You may take notes. My story really entails a lot of levels of sovereignty. So first of all, the traditional sovereignty. We have our natural birthrights that we feel belong to us, being born into the Oceti-Sakowin, the 7 council fires, and the Lakota Nation were one of the 7 council fires. And there's the Tioshpaye sovereignty, which is the extended family sovereignty. We have heads of our families, we have elders, and that's another form of governance. Underneath that is another form called the Tiwahe sovereignty, which is our family, our close-knit family, kind of like our family that lives in our homes. And then we have our individual sovereignty. This is where our names are important. It gives us our roles, kind of our life paths, maybe something to live up to. The other thing we have is non-traditional Indigenous sovereignty. So we have treaty sovereignty here in Standing Rock. We have the 1851 Fort Laramie Treaty, as well as the 1868 Fort Laramie Treaty. And we have tribal sovereignty, which is that of the Standing Rock Nation. Those are IRA or non-IRA governments. We're a non-IRA government. And then we have district, local, community sovereignty, which feeds into the tribal sovereignty. There's non-Indigenous sovereignty, of course, like we all know that we all have to deal with United Nations, the United States, and the state. Okay. So just the establishment of sovereignty and kind of like that gives me the okay to speak today, I guess, is I'm my uncle, he's the leader of our Tioshpaye, the oldest male. He gives me permission to speak and he supports me. The leader of my other Tioshpaye, my dad's family, Hank, he gives me permission and supports me. And then inside of our home, the leader of our home is the female. And so that's my wife. And she gives me permission to speak and supports me. And then my individual sovereignty, I'm not going to share my name, my dreams, my responsibilities. I don't feel like this is the place to share those things. So some of the natural birthrights of establishing why I feel I have a right as a Oceti-Sakowin person. Okay. I can trace my lineage back 11 generations. On the Lakota side of things, my grandfather, Dog Eagle, he fought in the Little Bighorn. My grandmother, Itesanwi, she was a survivor of Wounded Knee. My grandfather, Bareface, he fought encroachment in 1825 when we first started having interactions with non-Indigenous people. And then my grandfather, Jess Sr., he was a World War I Lakota code talker. And I'm also Dakota. My grandmother comes from Minnesota, and she was fleeing from the wars over there. And so, yeah. Next part of our level of sovereignty that comes into play in my story is the Fort Laramie Treaty and the Bad Man Clause under Article 1. We have, as a nation, have the ability to, they call it float, ban, reject, remove people from our reservation if they commit any wrongs upon us or the property of that we have. And so just keep that in mind. So as far as tribal sovereignty, we passed a resolution within our tribe at the Standing Rock level, at the non-IRA level, the resolution 150-22, which I'll talk about. It was 14-0 in favor of that resolution, and 2 were not voting. The chairwoman doesn't vote, and then there was a local district person that chose not to vote. 16 of the 17 members were present during that quorum. That resolution was signed the 3rd day of May, 2022. I'm also supported by my local community district at the local level of sovereignty. This is where the resolution restarted, and the vote was 14-0 by my community to push it forward to the full tribal council. Now I want to talk about how Lakota people, Indigenous, maybe not Indigenous, but Oceti-Sakowin people might view our language versus how a lot of other people view our languages from the business kind of, copyright kind of side of things. It's a whole different outlook. And so what I find interesting is the themes through all of these things. So these are efforts from the Cheyenne River Sioux tribe, which is a Lakota speaking tribe, from the Rosebud Sioux tribe, which is a Lakota speaking tribe, from the Sisseton-Wahpeton Oyate. They're a Dakota speaking tribe, and they're part of the Oceti-Sakowin, as are we. And then also our pipe keeper, Lexi Orville Looking Horse. Okay. So what I think is interesting, though, is a lot of the common themes in all of these. And I'm not going to go through all of these. I don't have enough time. But some of the themes are that of these tribal resolutions and codes and stuff is to establish authorities. Who is an authority that can give permission to share things? That's one thing. And then another theme throughout these is protecting us from the misappropriation and the exploitation, and from the personal gain of others or the financial gain of others to our data, to our language, to our stories, to our songs. And then another theme throughout these is also thinking about the next generations, the next 7 generations. I know other tribes out east have that thought, but in Lakota country too, we have that idea of thinking 7 generations ahead. And another big theme throughout all of these resolutions is that of our children. These are the rights that belong to our children. They're not necessarily ours, my generation, to give away. And so, so this is Cheyenne River Resolution 997. Okay. Well, what I like about this is that from the beginning, they established themselves as the authority through our oral history, through one of our sacred stories, and that's of the white buffalo calf pipe woman. And so they're telling the world that this is who we are, and this is who we are to speak on behalf of the Lakota Dakota language. And also on the second one, you can see that our sacred calf pipe keeper is Orville Looking Horse. And just continuing on with the story. And so protecting us from misappropriation, exploitation, we must document, protect, and preserve our Lakota language. And this one was made in 2007. And I like what the speaker before me had said about getting away from the word preservation. So in our communities too, we've gotten away from that word, but this was made in 2007. So like I said, I'm not going to go through all of this. The next one is Orville Looking Horse. So, this really jumped. Lost my spot here. More protections. Let's see. So the next one is Orville Looking Horse. This is a different way to describe a language and to talk about a language. Our sacred language connects through our umbilical cord to the sacred ancestors, the Tunka Oyate. Tunka is the ones who are, there's different translations, and I'm not an authority to speak on it, but the way I understand it is that the ones who are here first, and different things like that. And so this isn't talking about intellectual property necessarily. This isn't talking about the American way of looking at things. This is a right that is connected to us through our umbilical cord, to our ancestors. And this is a way of looking at it that we cannot be severed from this right. No matter what a state corporation says, no matter what a waiver says, no matter what the United States say, no matter what anybody says, this is a right that can't be severed. This is us and who we are as a birthright. And so just more of these, our cultural heritage. You'll see the word vitality through a lot of these, and I just like that word, so I just wanted to mention that. And so this is, again, Ordinance 57 from the Cheyenne River Sioux tribe. This one, how they establish kind of who we are, who they are, the Cheyenne River people. They mention the wars that they fought in, and that we fought to defend our Lakota way of life. And within this Lakota way of life is our language, our intellectual property, our stories. And they list the wars: the Powder River War of 1866, the Battle of Little Bighorn, and the so-called Great Sioux War of 1876. So I thought that was interesting. They also list that we've suffered persecution for speaking our language and practicing our ways of life. But what I like about it, the second sentence is that we've always maintained our Lakota language. It's a strength-based way of looking at things. It's still here because a lot of the dialogue around our languages is that they're dying, they're endangered, they're extinct. And those words are just cringe to my ears. They're here, celebrate them, maintain them, and so that's kind of a different view of how our people view these things. And so Rosebud, another Lakota-speaking tribe, also made a resolution about non-Lakota people coming into our nations with their own welfare in mind, utilizing individuals' names without consent, and using that to gain support. And they do support and extend protection rights for the research and documentation. Another kind of theme is the collaboration of the local groups that need to decide what is okay, what is not okay. Rosebud went as far as voting to standardize a writing system so that no outside entities can come and push the writing system on to the Rosebud people. Who I found has the most extensive kind of legal legwork so far is the Sisseton-Wahpeton Oyate. They have an extensive intellectual property code within their reservation. And I was really excited to find this, but the spirit of the direction is founded upon and reflected in its cultural heritage of the Sisseton-Wahpeton Oyate. And so again, I'm just trying to point out that this is a different way of viewing our language, that they're the exclusive owner of Indigenous traditional knowledge. And so all of these are really interesting in how what they think is important and how they protect it, the knowledge of remembered histories and traditions, the cultural landscapes, the events of historical and cultural significance, the sacred property, images, sounds, knowledge, material culture. And there's medicines in here. There's all kinds of different things, which I think is really interesting. And they describe how you can research. They describe how the tribal members will be empowered, not just how they won't get hurt, but how they will be empowered. And I love that way of looking at data. How is it going to empower our people? Because that, at the end of the day, that's what this is all about. Instead of just, they're not going to, how are we not going to be hurt? It's more of a strength-based stance. Okay, so collection of data. Again, this is just all in here just to show what we're doing as the Lakota Dakota people. All right, so I want to talk about my story, and I don't have much time, but I'm going to talk about my story. I'm currently under a cease and desist order from a state-based nonprofit corporation, the Lakota Language Consortium. But I talk without fear because I share the truth. And so I'm not afraid of any kind of threats or any kind of frivolous lawsuits. So back to these levels of sovereignty, the traditional levels of sovereignty, the non-traditional Indigenous sovereignty, and the non-Indigenous sovereignty. My story, my journey has all of these kind of levels that intermix and intertwine. First of all, 1990, the Native American Languages Act from the United States of America, that we preserve, protect, and promote the rights and freedom of Native Americans to use and practice and develop Native American languages. The right of Native Americans to express themselves through the use of Native American shall not be in any public proceeding, including publicly supported education programs. Keep that in mind. Also keep in mind Article 31 of the United Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, that we have a right as Indigenous people to maintain, control, and protect our cultural heritage. And so back to this organization, this is a state-based organization, a nonprofit that is incorporated. The articles of incorporation are under the state, Indiana state. And so there are Lakota people on their board. This is their board. They have non-Lakota people, Wilhelm Mayan Ulrich on their board, and then other Lakota people on their board. I think that's important to note because it gives kind of like, makes it look like it's a tribal sovereign working with underneath tribal sovereignty organization, but it's not. We could have 100 members on their board and it would still be a state-based nonprofit. And so this is the compensation. Wilhelm Maya, he is their board chair and he makes over 6 figures on our Lakota language. So this is really important, how waivers can try to seek to attack our sovereignty, our natural birthrights, to sever that cord, to attack our treaty rights, our tribal rights, and all of these things. If you look at this waiver, it says that it gives permission, unrestricted permission to copyright. And then a little bit further down, it says in all current or future formats. That means forever, if they keep renewing their copyright, right? And so that's one thing that's really important. So I'll get into it. And then these materials that this organization made, they have copyright notices on it. So this is the dictionary, the first dictionary. As you can see on the right, Our Nation, we invested in this and we helped to fund and support this. And then if you look to the left, there's the copyright notice, that no part of this publication may be reproduced or transmitted in any form or by any means, electronic or mechanical, including photocopy, recording, or any information storage and retrieval system without permission in writing from the publisher, right? So us as Dakota people, do we have to ask non-Lakota people if we can use our own language? That is our birthright. So I asked for recordings. Now this was a recording of my Unchi, my grandmother, that they shared on their website. I said, please ask for permission before sharing things that involve our grandmother. My father is the current administrator of her estate. I said, thank you for recording her, though. And then they respond back with, we have permission from Dolores herself. So this is an attack of trying to separate me and our Tioshpaye sovereignty from having agency over one of my own relatives' estate. And so here, I said what I was going to do, that I was going to continue to open source this grammar book that the Cheyenne River Sioux tribe helped to and invested in. I was going to do it in our Lakota language learning group. And then I did it. And then I received an email from Memrise, because I made the lesson and then I put it onto Memrise, which a lot of us know is a language learning app. And then I received a copyright infringement notice from the legal owner of the content posted in our course. And then I had 48 hours to remove that, and it was removed. So if you go back to the United States rights, right, it is our right to express ourselves through the use of Native Americans languages in any public proceeding, including publicly supported education program. We also have the rights to practice and to speak our languages according to the United States of America. Within that, on May 18th, 2021, I was attacked by this organization. I was specifically named, even my internet alias is on there, Ray Taken Live, aka Reg Charging. Okay. Throughout all of this, I'm not going to post the video, but my grandmother's story was still being shared, sold in the TLC and LLC websites, despite all of this. And so they refused to take down my grandmother's recordings. I would post on here. This is from the Ray Taken Live account. I would post these things, and then I went to check for some reason on the Reg Charging account, which is a comedy thing I use. You can't see my comment where I asked them to take down the video of my grandmother. Right. So this again is an attack on our Tioshpaye sovereignty. Here, the Lakota Summer Institute, a name that our tribe and the LLC were using together, just what it sounds, the Lakota Summer Institute. In 2018, they left Standing Rock, and then they trademarked the words, the Lakota Summer Institute. So we have a state-based corporation trademarking Lakota Summer Institute over the tribe, attacking our tribal sovereignty. So our resolution, we pushed a resolution through 150-22. We went to the HEW department, Health, Education, Wellness. It was voted 3-0 in support. We went to the Bear Soldier District, my district, it was voted 14-0 in support. We went to the Cannonball District, it was voted 21-0 in support. And then Standing Rock Tribal Council, it was voted 14-0 in support. So we built consensus through kind of like grassroots organizing. And what was important to us is that we start to have these conversations, maintain, revitalize, we have reclamation. We assert our intellectual property rights in perpetuity. That was important because of waivers that say in all future formats. And another thing is trying to establish who the authorities are, the elder speakers and the customary traditional leadership and knowledge keepers. A big thing is access for us. Who has access to what and for how long and for what purposes. And so that was important that we wrote into this resolution. I just want to give a shout out to my Hankashi, Jennifer Weston. She was the one who wrote this resolution, and then we all kind of chipped in and gave our ideas. We threw it off different language people, elders, lawyers, different people like that. And so that's kind of what this resolution is about. And like I said, the controversial part of it, none of it was controversial except this, in that Standing Rock took the dramatic step to reject, ban, and float. Remember, from Article 1 of the Fort Laramie Treaty, we have that right reserved to us as our treaty governments and our IRA, non-IRA governments, and that we ban the Lakota Language Consortium, the Language Conservancy, Wilhelm Maya, and Jan Ulrich for ongoing unethical driven efforts to attack and intimidate our learners, continually misleading our elders, the grossly undercompensated and unattributed expertise for sale to our own people in a commercial audience without any provision to protect or maintain our sacred stories as an inalienable and non-transferable collective Ocheti Shakoi birthright. So that goes to our original sovereignty that can't be touched by anybody, and who we are as a people, right? And so after that, the attack set in. Like I said, I was named initially in some of this press. After that, I was just single individual, right? And this is an article in the city that basically a single member instigator resolution was able to mischaracterize and misrepresent the work we do. They sent out emails on this stuff with, single tribal individual, single individual. They sponsored ads on social media attacking me, or single individual or a single tribal member. They also sponsored ads on Twitter for this. I'm not sure if that's an okay use of nonprofit funds, but this is what happened. And then, so with that, they're still continuing to sell our data for $49.95, right? And what is in that? So this is a recording of my grandmother, and this is a 30-minute recording, and I'm not going to play it. It wants to play it, but I'm not going to play it. And anyway, in this, they take her sentences of what she says, and then they throw them into their example sentences of our dictionary, right? Without the permission from our Tioshpaye, without the permission from our family, our extended family. And obviously the tribe took copyright protections over our intellectual property as citizens and as Standing Rock members. And so with that, these are all sentences my grandmother said that are organized under this copyright and that are sold for $49.95. The other important thing is that there's no attribution to my grandmother. It doesn't say who said this. It doesn't say what community she's from. And it doesn't say when she said this, right? For a lack of respect for our people, our dialects, our communities, and also our tribal sovereignty and our Tiwahe Tioshpaye sovereignty, right? These are just more examples of that. And then the other thing is some of our sacred things, our songs, and some of our cultural expressions are also organized under a state-based nonprofit corporation. The first one on the left is a Sundance song, second one talking about the white buffalo calf pipe woman. this one, let's see. On the second one is a Sundance song. I tried to blur out the Lakota. The third one is our pipe filling song. And so a lot of people object to the selling of our sacred songs organized under state-based nonprofit corporations, right? And so it just kind of gets back to those levels and layers of sovereignty and how these all interconnect and how these all work together. And so some people have said our resolution, oh, it's just an IRA government resolution trying to dismiss what it is. But there's a lot of power in our tribal governments, because tribal governments influence American laws, American Congress and different things, influences United Nations and how they want to deal with us. And so it's been difficult. It's been a lot. We're still fighting as a family to get back those rights to my grandmother. Not just recordings, all of the rights, the copyrights, licensing authorities, patents, trademarks, publishing, distribution, everything to my grandmother. And also to gain control so that others can't continue to profit off of who she was and her legacy. And so I think I'm up. My time's up. I tried to rush. I'm sorry. I went way over. I apologize. But again, thank you for having me. The Penobscot Nation has really been a strong influence to me. In reading that New Yorker article, I've quoted Jane Anderson so many times on that, and that languages can't be, people always say you can't copyright a language, but through the misadventures of intellectual property, languages can be taken that way. So that's all I got. Thank you.
Yoda, thank you, Ray. Thank you for sharing your story. There's so much, really so much in that. Both the ability or the ways in which tribal nations have sought to express the way in which they want to protect their languages and their knowledge and their data and their stories, and then that real challenge that's, a couple of other things was, one was the real challenge that sits there between the need to not only protect but the ability to have it to be used and to support the flourishing and the vitality and empowerment of the community itself. And then just sitting here looking at your slide still on the screen, and those sort of different levels of sovereignty and authority that sit there and need to be aligned to have things work in the way in which it should. And this, and what happens when those things start to clash between traditional sovereignties and some of the legal frameworks that exist as well. So thanks very much for that.